It's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I hear this is a great conference. I've been very much looking forward to this. I'm going to talk to you about the democratization of card payments today and why we think iZettle is a great service and how we can change the world to the better, slowly but surely. So let's start by killing off one of the myths. Cash, as we know it, is not dead. I mean, credit card companies and others are telling you that cash is dying. It's certainly not being used at the same frequency as it used to be, but it's certainly not dead. However, if you look across most markets around the world, and if you look at the UK in particular, you can say that 70% of consumers in general in more mature card markets prefer to pay with cards. So the effect of that is, in most cases, that if people walk into a store that don't take cards, in general, people don't carry cash, so they walk away to the next store. Now that becomes a problem. So with this fact, you would actually believe that most companies do take card payments. The weird thing is that looking in Europe, 20 million companies are not. And these companies are typically micro merchants, the smallest companies, typically between 1 to 3 employees. They run cafes, they run hair salons, they run chiropractor studios, and so on and so forth. And I mean, if you look at each one of them, they are pretty small in terms of how much money they actually process in a month, or in a week, or in a day. But it becomes more interesting on an aggregated level. So 20 to 30% of the GDP in any given European market you actually look at is generated by these small companies. That's 60% of the total employment in each and every market that you look at across Europe. In other parts of the world, South America, looking at Brazil and Mexico, for example, these numbers are even higher. I mean, looking at GDP, it's 50% and north of that. And looking at employment, it's way beyond 70%. So actually, all these small merchants are extremely relevant for the economy. So why haven't they been addressed by the existing industry? Well, it's pretty easy. It's economics. I mean, for any bank to take on these customers that only process one transaction a day, they are simply not profitable. For a bank to bring on a new customer, probably costs them around 500 euros, 2,000 euros. So in order to close off parts of the market, they've imposed entry barriers to getting access to card payments in the form of fixed fees. So if you want a card terminal, or actually if you wanted a card terminal when iZettle started back in 2010, you had to pay up like 1,500 euros to get your card terminal. Then in some strange way you had to sign up for a 24-month contract, even though you only needed your card terminal for the day, or for 2 days at Slush, or whatever it might be. And then, obviously, those fees were covered in the sense of technical support fees, and you never know which kind of technical support you get from banks. On top of that, you had to pay a transaction fee. So with this logic, it didn't make sense for these small businesses to start accepting card payments. So that's what we're changing. We're taking away the friction out of payments. Instead of having to walk into your bank office to get a card terminal, you can sign up in 5 minutes to get access to card payments. In 5 minutes, you can actually take your first payment and get your money on your bank account the next day. Instead of having to use all this sort of crappy technology to run your store, now you can use your iPad and just the iZettle chip and pin reader, or just get all the access to information and data through the cloud-based services that we provide. So for us, it's really about helping these small businesses to, first of all, get access to card payments. Second is helping them to grow their business. Because effectively, if we can help them do that, the world becomes much more interesting. And to give you an example on how we're taking away friction even further, in some of the markets, we introduced something we call the smart price. So we see some of the customers that we have, they go beyond being a small merchant, only processing a couple of €100 per day or per month, and then going beyond that. So instead of them having to go to iZettle and start negotiating prices, we offer them a smarter pricing alternative. Effectively, the more they pay, the more they sell, the more they transact, the less they pay. And it's a more automated solution. They don't have to come to us. They don't have to start negotiating. They will be certain to always get the best price. So how big can this get? I mean, how relevant is this really? Is it only Sweden and Finland where it's relevant? Well, if you look in Europe, again, over here, as I said, we have roughly 20 million companies that don't take card payments today. If you look at some more specific economics, we have in the area of 30, 35 payment terminals per 1,000 inhabitants in Finland, Sweden, Norway, Europe overall. I think if you start looking at other parts of the world, Mexico and Brazil, where we launched just this summer, the economics is even more interesting. So effectively, Brazil is the second biggest card market in the world, right after the US. They have roughly the same kind of card penetration per capita as we do here, as many cards. However, if you look at the number of terminals in Brazil, it's around 20 terminals per 1,000 inhabitants, and here 35. If you look in Mexico, situation is slightly more different compared to Brazil. But looking again at infrastructure, they have 5 terminals per 1,000 inhabitants. So I think we are extremely relevant for effectively any market in the world, and I think a good example of that is we launched in Brazil. In less than a month, we had 35,000 small businesses and new merchants having signed up and gotten access to card payments through iZettle. So the demand is fantastic, and I think actually Europe is probably one of the more mature continents that we'll come across. I mean, the situation in Asia is very similar to Latin America. So we've always had the vision that we want to democratize payments. And I mean, democratizing is a big word, and it's fluffy and all that, but we want really anyone to be able to start accepting payments. Not only you as individuals selling your bed on eBay, or the small cafe that just set up shop, next door. But we fundamentally want to change the infrastructure of society. And I think a great example of that is just a couple of weeks ago, we launched together with Situation Stockholm, which is the Swedish equivalent to the Big Issue in the UK and in Finland. So effectively a street paper produced by professional journalists, sold by homeless people to finance their lives. So one of the biggest problems that this guy is talking about, his name is Jack. He's a Swedish homeless guy trying to make a living from selling these papers. One of his biggest problems prior to him being able to take card payments was the best excuse for any of us when we walked by him. So he said, "You want to buy this? Sorry, man, got no cash." With this, all of a sudden, that excuse is gone, and his sales is moving up again, making the world a little bit better for these guys. If you look slightly into the future and really where we want to go, I mean, payments, to be honest, payments per se is really, really boring. But I mean, what we can do with payments, and again, coming back to the 20 million companies in Europe, I mean, 95% of all commerce is taking place offline. And still today, all these guys working in cafes and stores offline, they don't still have any access to any similar data that any small online store would have in terms of CRM, in terms of loyalty, how to communicate with their customers. Imagine if the cafe owner could just send an email to his most loyal customers saying that if you come in today, I'll give you a coffee for free and you get 50% off any sandwich. I mean, when you start thinking around that and you look at the situation in Europe today where there are roughly 20 million people unemployed, imagine, or at least that's what we do, if we can help these small companies, help them grow their business to the next level in terms of processed volume so that they can take on the next employee. That's truly helping out in Europe truly helping out to fight unemployment. It's a vision. They have to be big, but that's what we're aiming for. Thank you very much.